The wind moved like a memory through the broken boards of the old barn, carrying the kind of silence that once held screams. In the shadows, something watched, eyes amber like dusk, wide and unblinking, caught between fear and hope. No chains held him now, yet he remained, frozen not by iron, but by everything life had taken. Have you ever wondered what it takes to trust again, when the world has only taught you to run? If you're with us tonight, I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from? And if this story touches something inside you, take a moment to subscribe. There's more to come, and this is only the beginning. Ethan stepped carefully into the dimly lit barn, the wood beneath his boots creaking softly as if whispering caution. The fading sunlight spilled through gaps in the weathered walls, casting long shadows that danced restlessly. His gaze swept the cluttered space until it settled on a pair of watchful, amber eyes staring back from the darkest corner. Ethan held his breath. The German shepherd, Ranger, sat rigidly, his powerful body emaciated beneath a coat matted from neglect. Fear and defiance fought fiercely in the dog's eyes, each wary breath a declaration of survival. Slowly lowering himself onto an overturned crate, Ethan spoke in quiet, soothing tones. "It's all right, buddy. No one's gonna hurt you here." His voice trembled slightly, the calm exterior masking his own buried grief. 2 years earlier, he'd lost his wife, Emily, to a devastating house fire, an incident that scarred him deeply, leaving a persistent emptiness. Ethan struggled daily to conceal. Minutes stretched into hours as Ethan waited patiently, unmoving except for the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest. Ranger growled softly, the sound more sorrowful than aggressive, born of years spent isolated and betrayed. Occasionally, his ears twitched uncertainly, catching Ethan's gentle voice, a tone unlike any he'd heard before. For Ranger, humans meant pain, neglect, and broken promises. Yet, something in Ethan's unwavering patience, the respectful distance he maintained, tugged subtly at the dog's wary heart. Outside, twilight gently enfolded the countryside in shades of blue and gray, the evening air carrying scents of grass and distant rain. Ranger's growling gradually subsided into cautious silence, his tense muscles aching from relentless alertness. Ethan continued whispering stories from his past, tales of happier times, of love and loss, of laughter shared with Emily beneath sunlit skies. Ranger watched closely, ears flickering with intrigue at the tender cadence of Ethan's voice. Eventually, Ethan moved a fraction, carefully reaching into his pocket to retrieve a small piece of dried meat. Ranger stiffened instantly, suspicion flaring, eyes narrowing sharply. Ethan placed the morsel on the dusty floor, gently nudging it forward. He withdrew his hand cautiously, signaling clearly that no demands or threats accompanied the offering. Minutes later, Ranger inched forward, nostrils quivering nervously, his heart pounding with a desperate combination of hunger and mistrust. Ethan's heart raced as he observed Ranger's hesitant approach, quietly hopeful that trust might sprout from these fragile beginnings. With trembling limbs, Ranger finally accepted the meat, quickly retreating to his corner, chewing warily. Ethan smiled softly, an unfamiliar warmth flooding his chest. A first step, he thought, toward healing for both of them. In the deepening darkness, Ethan's thoughts drifted back to the warnings he'd received earlier that day from Officer Thompson, a middle-aged policeman known locally for his blunt honesty. "That dog's dangerous, Ethan," Thompson had cautioned firmly, concern shadowing his usually cheerful face. "No one's ever gotten close to him, let alone tried to rescue him. Are you sure you want to risk this?" Ethan had met the officer's gaze calmly. "Someone's got to give him a chance, Mike," he replied, voice steady with quiet conviction. Officer Thompson had shaken his head, resigned yet admiring the courage Ethan showed, despite his own painful past. Returning to the present, Ethan spoke again softly, addressing Ranger with compassion he himself had long forgotten. "We've both lost a lot, haven't we? Maybe, together, we can find our way back." For a moment, the air felt charged with tentative understanding. Ranger's amber eyes softened imperceptibly, a glimmer of yearning breaking through layers of distrust and trauma. The night pressed gently around them, stars emerging quietly above the barn's aged roof, distant observers to the fragile bond beginning to take shape within those worn wooden walls. Ethan exhaled deeply, feeling an unexpected peace wash over him for the first time since losing Emily. Watching Ranger closely, he whispered reassuringly, "We'll figure this out, Ranger. You and me, we're not alone anymore." The dog listened, ears now lifted attentively, the shadows around him seeming to lighten slightly under Ethan's gentle promise. Neither of them knew exactly what lay ahead, but for tonight, it was enough simply to sit together, beneath the quiet gaze of stars, hopeful in each other's presence. Days turned into a slow rhythm of patience and cautious hope as Ethan continued his quiet vigil beside Ranger in the old barn. Each morning, Ethan would arrive early, bringing small portions of food, fresh water, and a steadfast determination. Ranger, the wary German shepherd with his deep amber eyes still clouded by mistrust, continued to regard every approach with suspicion. Although he no longer growled fiercely or snapped defensively, he kept Ethan firmly at a distance, always prepared for betrayal or sudden harm. Neighbors often passed by the property, pausing briefly to peer curiously into the barn. One morning, an older woman named Margaret Johnson, known locally for her kind demeanor and love for animals, approached Ethan cautiously. Margaret had short silver hair, neatly styled, eyes gentle yet full of concern. She held a basket of freshly baked bread, her offering both a gesture of neighborly kindness and a subtle attempt at intervention. She paused several yards away, hesitant to intrude on Ethan's delicate work. "You know, Ethan," she said softly, her voice tinged with sympathetic worry, "everyone in town is talking about what you're doing. Some admire your courage, but most folks think you're risking too much with that dog. They're scared he'll never be safe around people again." Ethan smiled politely, taking in Margaret's words without offense. He understood their concerns. He shared some himself, but deeper within was a conviction he couldn't ignore. "I appreciate your honesty, Mrs. Johnson," Ethan replied calmly, his eyes briefly glancing towards Ranger. "But I think there's something special beneath all that fear. He deserves someone willing to see it." Margaret nodded slowly, her expression softening as she handed Ethan the bread and walked away, leaving him alone again with his fragile hope. Later that day, Officer Mike Thompson arrived, the familiar cruiser pulling slowly onto the gravel driveway, tires crunching softly. Thompson stepped out, adjusting his cap as he approached, his stocky frame carrying the quiet authority of his position in the small community. He stopped a safe distance away, respectful of the delicate progress Ethan might have made. "Ethan, I just need you to hear this from me," Mike began quietly, his tone friendly but firm. "We're grateful for what you're trying to do, but I can't ignore the complaints anymore. Folks are worried Ranger might break loose or hurt someone. You have to be sure you can handle him, or we'll have to intervene." Ethan felt a pang of sadness ripple through him, understanding the genuine concern behind Mike's words. "I know, Mike," Ethan replied softly, his voice steady despite the weight of uncertainty pressing upon him. "I promise. The moment I feel I can't help him, I'll let you know. But please, just give us some more time. He needs a chance." Mike studied Ethan's earnest face carefully, his resolve softening into reluctant trust. "All right," he sighed gently, "just promise me you'll stay careful." Ethan nodded gratefully, watching the officer return to his car, leaving him once more in the quiet solitude of the barn. Returning inside, Ethan noticed Ranger had watched the entire exchange, his ears swiveling curiously at the calm interactions between Ethan and the visitors. Ethan resumed his place, sitting cross-legged and speaking softly once more. "You see, Ranger," Ethan whispered, "not everyone's given up on you. But even if they had, I wouldn't. Trust isn't easy, I get that, but I'm here however long it takes." As days continued, Ethan began noticing subtle changes in Ranger's behavior. Though still wary, the dog moved a little closer each day, his tense posture easing slightly, his watchful eyes showing the first flickers of genuine curiosity. Occasionally, when Ethan gently extended his hand towards Ranger, the dog sniffed cautiously from a safe distance, never quite touching but no longer recoiling in panic. Each tiny gesture of trust was a precious victory, a quiet reassurance that Ethan's heart had chosen the right path. He recognized Ranger's struggles mirrored his own. Both carried wounds that ran deep beneath their surfaces. Perhaps, Ethan thought hopefully, healing Ranger was also a way to mend the broken places within himself. Every evening as Ethan left the barn, he spoke softly to Ranger, assuring him he'd return at sunrise. Ranger would watch silently, eyes following him until he disappeared from view, beginning to understand, perhaps, that someone could be counted upon again. For Ethan, the journey had just begun, but every small step forward reaffirmed the possibility that trust and healing might truly be within reach, for them both. The barn was quiet, filled only with the gentle sounds of nature filtering through cracks in the old wooden structure. Ethan sat patiently near Ranger, softly humming an old tune that had once been Emily's favorite, his voice gentle enough not to startle but comforting enough to soothe. Each passing moment deepened the fragile bond between them, built on patience and mutual vulnerability. Ranger, the German shepherd whose once magnificent black and tan coat still bore marks of past neglect, lay quietly watching Ethan, his amber eyes reflecting an internal battle. Hunger for affection wrestled with instinctual wariness, yet he felt drawn towards Ethan, the human who refused to leave him alone in his fear. The dog moved hesitantly, lifting himself slightly to edge closer, his muscles tense with uncertainty. Ethan's heart quickened with cautious hope, sensing that something was about to change. Slowly, Ethan stretched out a gentle hand, palm open and unthreatening. He murmured soothingly, "It's okay, Ranger. You're safe now. I promise." Ranger's eyes studied the outstretched hand carefully, sniffing cautiously from a safe distance before inching even closer. The gap between them narrowed with every heartbeat, until finally, for the first time, the dog's cold, damp nose brushed softly against Ethan's fingertips. The fleeting contact sent a rush of warmth through Ethan's chest, his throat tightening with emotion as tears blurred his vision. "Good boy," he whispered softly, his voice shaking slightly with relief and joy. In that quiet, profound moment, Ranger began to visibly relax. Ethan gently moved his fingers, careful not to frighten the dog, who now allowed the tender touch along his muzzle. Ranger sighed deeply, a quiet, vulnerable sound carrying the weight of years spent alone, longing desperately for kindness. Ethan felt the subtle tremor of the dog's jaw beneath his hand, realizing that beneath Ranger's fierce exterior lay profound loneliness and a deep yearning for companionship. Days passed, and Ranger continued his tentative steps toward trust, increasingly allowing Ethan's gentle touch, first on his head, then along his neck, finally surrendering fully to the warmth of human affection. Ranger's cautious movements gradually transformed, his wary posture easing as he dared to lay his head on Ethan's lap, eyes slowly closing in rare and precious peace. Ethan smiled quietly, softly stroking the dog's matted fur, knowing each gesture further solidified their bond. One sunny afternoon, a gentle knock interrupted their quiet moment together. Sarah Williams, Ethan's younger sister, stood at the barn entrance. With shoulder-length chestnut hair and a soft-spoken, caring nature, Sarah had always worried deeply about Ethan since Emily's death. She approached slowly, her eyes widening with astonishment at the sight before her. "Ethan," she whispered in disbelief, "I never thought Ranger would let anyone near him like this." "He just needed someone to believe in him," Ethan replied softly, smiling as Ranger stirred slightly but did not retreat, his trust now rooted deeply enough to remain steady. Sarah watched them thoughtfully, her voice tender as she gently asked, "Do you think he could ever truly heal?" Ethan looked down at Ranger, considering the scars both visible and invisible, and replied gently but firmly, "Yes, Sarah, I do. Everyone deserves the chance to heal." Ranger opened his eyes briefly, meeting Ethan's gaze as though acknowledging the truth in those words. Sarah smiled warmly, sensing the depth of healing already taking place, not only within Ranger but also within her brother. Ethan had not shown such openness or hope since losing Emily, and now, through caring for Ranger, something deep inside him had begun to mend. As the sun dipped lower, casting warm, golden rays through the gaps in the barn walls. Ranger shifted slightly, moving even closer into Ethan's comforting touch. Ethan continued softly humming Emily's song, the gentle melody wrapping around them like an embrace, healing layers of grief and loneliness that had seemed impossible to overcome. Ranger, sensing the calm reassurance in Ethan's presence, sighed contentedly, finally feeling secure enough to surrender completely to this newfound peace. In that delicate moment, both man and dog understood clearly they were no longer alone. Through patience, trust, and compassion, a once impossible connection had been forged, built upon the shared courage to open their wounded hearts and believe in the possibility of healing once again. The afternoon sunlight cascaded warmly through the windows of Ethan's modest house, illuminating the cozy living room where Ranger stood hesitantly, glancing around with cautious curiosity. Ethan knelt beside him, speaking softly, his voice gentle but firm, offering reassurance at each uncertain step the German Shepherd took in this unfamiliar environment. Ranger's eyes, now brighter and less wary, still occasionally flickered with memories of darker days, shadows that lingered at the edges of his consciousness. But he was slowly learning to push them aside. For Ranger, everything about this new home carried unfamiliar scents and sensations, from the softness of the rugs under his paws to the comforting aroma of homemade food lingering in the air. Ethan watched carefully, noting every subtle reaction from his companion, determined to ensure that Ranger felt safe in every corner of the small home they now shared. The once neglected dog hesitated momentarily near a worn leather sofa, sniffing cautiously before finally leaping lightly onto it. Settling down gently, his gaze locked firmly on Ethan for approval. Ethan smiled warmly, nodding encouragement, relieved to see the dog's tension ease further. Ranger responded to Ethan's soft encouragement with a quiet sigh, stretching out comfortably, feeling a sense of calm wash over him for the first time in years. Each moment that passed saw Ranger relaxing deeper into the newfound sense of safety Ethan had patiently provided. Later that evening, Ethan sat quietly reading in his armchair, a soft lamplight casting a gentle glow over the pages of his book. Ranger, who had been cautiously exploring each room throughout the day, approached him slowly. With deliberate care, the dog lowered himself onto the floor next to Ethan's chair, letting out a contented breath as his head rested lightly against Ethan's leg. Ethan paused his reading, deeply touched by Ranger's simple gesture of trust, carefully setting aside his book to stroke Ranger's fur, which was now beginning to regain its healthy sheen. "You're doing so well, Ranger," Ethan whispered gently, his heart swelling with quiet pride at the dog's courage and resilience. "I know it's not easy to trust again after everything you've endured, but you're safe here. I promise." Ranger closed his eyes, the tension in his body gradually fading, his breathing steadying into the soft rhythm of sleep, comforted by Ethan's gentle touch and reassuring presence. The following days were filled with steady progress and quiet victories. Ethan carefully introduced Ranger to short walks around their quiet neighborhood, the gentle rustle of leaves and cheerful greetings from neighbors slowly replacing Ranger's past anxieties with tentative curiosity and cautious friendliness. Each interaction was carefully managed by Ethan, always calm and encouraging, allowing Ranger to build trust at his own pace. One sunny morning, during their regular walk, they encountered Grace Anderson, a young veterinarian who lived down the street. Grace, with her soft brown curls and kind eyes, had watched Ethan and Ranger's progress from afar, intrigued and touched by their bond. She approached slowly, speaking in gentle, soothing tones, careful not to frighten the cautious German Shepherd. "He looks wonderful, Ethan," Grace said warmly, kneeling carefully to let Ranger sniff her hand. "You've done an amazing job." Ethan smiled appreciatively, grateful for Grace's understanding and patience. Ranger carefully examined Grace's hand before gently nudging it, a quiet request for affection. Grace's eyes brightened with joy, stroking Ranger's fur tenderly, whispering softly to the dog, praising his bravery. Ethan watched quietly, moved deeply by the scene, realizing how far Ranger had come from those lonely days in the barn. That night, as Ethan prepared for bed, Ranger followed closely behind, pausing at the doorway of Ethan's bedroom, uncertain whether he was welcome to enter. Ethan smiled warmly, patting the edge of his bed gently, invitingly. "Come here, Ranger," Ethan murmured softly, encouraging the dog forward. After a brief hesitation, Ranger approached the bed, leaping up softly, settling close beside Ethan, his head resting gently on Ethan's chest, a profound gesture of newfound trust and affection. Ethan lay still, tears quietly gathering in his eyes, deeply touched by this intimate moment. "Thank you, Ranger," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "for letting me in. For giving us both a chance to heal." Ranger let out a gentle sigh, his breathing calm and steady, feeling truly safe and deeply loved. In that quiet moment of trust and companionship, both Ethan and Ranger knew they had found something precious and rare. A new beginning, born from courage, patience, and the gentle power of trust reborn. In the gentle months that followed, Ranger blossomed remarkably under Ethan's loving care, transforming from a fearful, wounded animal into a strong, confident companion. His black and tan coat now gleamed with health, his amber eyes brightened by trust and devotion. The deep bond that had formed between Ethan and Ranger became evident to everyone around them, capturing the hearts of neighbors and strangers alike. As Ranger's health and confidence returned, he seemed determined to repay Ethan's kindness with unwavering loyalty. He seldom left Ethan's side, attentive to every word and gesture, ready to offer silent comfort whenever shadows of Ethan's past grief appeared. Their presence in the community inspired many, and neighbors who had once doubted Ranger now admired his gentle temperament and the remarkable change Ethan had brought about through patience and compassion. One warm Saturday afternoon, Ethan and Ranger attended a local community event organized by the Springdale Animal Welfare Society. Held in a bright, grassy park, the gathering aimed to educate people about animal rights, rescue, and rehabilitation. Families gathered around booths decorated with balloons and informative banners, children laughed as they played with friendly dogs, and volunteers proudly shared success stories of rescued animals. Ranger stood calmly beside Ethan, drawing curious and admiring glances from those who had heard whispers of his dramatic transformation. At the event, Ethan spoke softly yet powerfully to a small audience gathered near a modest wooden stage. His calm demeanor, coupled with his sincere voice, resonated deeply with listeners. Ethan shared Ranger's journey from darkness into light, emphasizing the importance of patience, empathy, and forgiveness. As Ethan spoke, Ranger sat faithfully beside him, ears perked and head held high, quietly demonstrating the truth behind Ethan's words. The audience listened attentively, visibly moved by the story of mutual healing and trust. After the presentation, several people approached Ethan, eager to express their gratitude and share their own experiences. Among them was a young boy named Danny Miller, a bright-eyed 10-year-old with sandy blonde hair and a shy smile, who approached cautiously with his mother, Laura, a gentle woman with auburn hair and a kind expression. "Can I pet your dog?" Danny asked softly, glancing hopefully at Ranger. Ethan nodded warmly, encouraging Danny forward. The boy carefully extended his hand, smiling with delight as Ranger gently nudged his palm affectionately, tail wagging softly. "He's amazing," Danny whispered, glancing up at Ethan with admiration. "I want to help animals like him one day too." Ethan smiled warmly, touched deeply by the genuine kindness in Danny's eyes. "You already are helping," Ethan replied softly. "Just by caring and understanding, you've taken the first step." Ranger, sensing the sincerity of the interaction, rested his head gently against Danny's chest, making the boy's face light up with quiet joy. Nearby, Laura watched, tears of pride and gratitude filling her eyes. She thanked Ethan quietly, moved by the profound lesson of compassion and second chances her son was experiencing. Inspired by such encounters, Ethan and Ranger began participating regularly in similar community outreach programs, speaking at schools, shelters, and local events. Their story traveled far beyond Springdale, becoming a powerful symbol of hope, healing, and redemption. Letters poured in from across the country, filled with stories of courage and recovery, inspired directly by Ethan and Ranger's extraordinary journey together. On a quiet evening after one particularly emotional presentation at Springdale Elementary, Ethan sat thoughtfully in his living room, Ranger curled comfortably at his feet. The gentle light from the fireplace flickered softly, illuminating the gratitude-filled letters carefully placed on the coffee table beside him. Ethan reached down gently, scratching Ranger behind the ears, reflecting silently on how far they had come. "We did it, buddy," Ethan whispered softly, his voice rich with emotion. "We turned pain into purpose, and we're just getting started." Ranger lifted his head, amber eyes glowing warmly as he nudged Ethan's hand affectionately, seeming to understand and wholeheartedly agree. Together, they had transformed their shared wounds into strength, inspiring others to believe in the power of love, patience, and forgiveness. Ethan realized clearly, as he met Ranger's steady, trusting gaze, that this was their new purpose, to continue sharing their message of compassion and hope, proving that even the deepest scars could heal with gentle care and unwavering faith. As the evening drew quietly around them, Ethan and Ranger sat together in comfortable silence, hearts at peace, both knowing they had found their true mission: to heal others by sharing their own journey from sorrow to redemption, forever bonded by courage, trust, and the enduring power of love. Sometimes, life's greatest lessons come quietly, taught through acts of patience, sacrifice, and unwavering loyalty. Ethan and Ranger showed us that even the deepest scars can heal, if we're brave enough to trust again. If their story touched your heart, please consider subscribing. And together, we'll continue sharing moments of hope, healing, and compassion.